Hi, guys, and welcome to my channel. And welcome to Circle City Witches, Episode 1, Part 2. If you did not watch Part 1 of this episode, I would highly recommend going to check out Part 1 over on Jasmine Ambrose's channel. I will link that down below. Be sure to be subscribed to Jasmine's channel and my channel so that you can keep notified and keep track of when we come out with new episodes for this podcast. So about a year ago, Jasmine and I actually came out with a sort of like pilot for this podcast, a sort of pilot episode, if you will. But we're back, and we're back with a new member, and we really want to get the ball rolling on this. So our first episode is on necromancy, cemeteries, and the red soul. So I hope you enjoy. Where are we at? Oldest grave. Oh, any lore, folklore, history surrounding the cemetery. I could not find anything on mine. I tried, y'all. So y'all can take the stage because I don't have any. I don't have anything for this section.
Well, for me, like outside of the Freemasonry, schooling, psychic kid vision, dying aspect, and the unmarked grave aspect, there was also a grave robbery heist associated with the Farley Cemetery.
And you said that was not that long ago.
No, it wasn't that long ago. I don't know the exact year. I would have to pull it up.
Which is crazy because I think of grave robbing and I think of I think of the 14, 15, 1600s when I think of grave robbing, and to think of people in the modern times like grave robbing, grow up.
Bizarre.
No, and from veterans, they were literally stealing from veterans, like stealing their bronze statues on their graves, and they stole from 18 different graves.
Oh my God.
That's like crack.
So
crackhead.
Yeah, but they had to develop a whole sting to catch these two. And it's just crazy. So that was some fucked up lore.
Not the Thelma and Louise of grave robbing in Indiana.
Yeah. And
when did that happen?
Let me look it up. So let's see.
This is another thing, y'all, for us to put on the list when people are like, Indiana, there's nothing there. We have a Thelma and Louise grave robbing duo that had a heist of stealing veteran copper monuments. So, yeah.
Tell me that's not tea.
Also, corn. That's it.
It's corn.
It's corn.
Corn nuggets, corn cake, corn fields. I was saying you got to be careful when you're plucking corn, in case anyone's watching and maybe getting any ideas. Okay. If you're going to be bad, at least be good at it. Number one, right? We already discussed that number one rule. Allegedly for entertainment purposes, I may or may not have known some folks in my time who have driven down and in the middle of the night hopped out of the vehicle, taken a few things of corn and hopped back in the vehicle. Do be careful with that, because the way Indiana law is set up, you can and will get glocked if you're not careful, depending on where you are.
Yeah.
So,
no, for sure.
There's videos of it.
Maybe go to the farmer's market. Maybe go to the farmer's market for your fresh corn, babe.
Yeah. I've even wanted to do a photo shoot in a cornfield before. And even then I'm like, I need to get permission. I would be nervous to do that, even that without permission.
Oh, go to an apple orchard and you can probably find a little strand in the corn maze and have a cute family photo op.
Just take bites from the apples and throw them on the ground. So I did research, doing my little clicky clacky on here. And the robberies happened August of 2024. So literally last month.
What?
It was,
y'all,
they were finally caught last month.
Bad if we are no longer doing the crackhead energy of stripping copper from TVs, but now we're taking.
But it wasn't just Carmel. They did other locations too, like Greenwood.
Oh, they graveyard hopped.
Still in different veterans' bronze statues.
Oh my God.
Whenever you get a chance, will you please?
The guy was 52 years old. The woman was 20 something, I think.
Whenever you get a chance, will you please send me a link so I can fall down the rabbit hole about this, because I need to know these Thelma and Louise grave robbers. I need for science. I need to.
it would be interesting to read more about that. Any more lore, Cora, that you'd like to cover and for your cemetery?
My cemetery is just crazy. I don't know.
I love how you're like, oh, just like the psychic little boy and the Freemasons and just like a very like crazy, wild Thelma and Louise grave robber. Just like
no big deal.
And like the unmarked graves, you know.
Just like an unmarked grave.
The partial human remains hanging around. It's fine.
Partial. How do they know they're partial? Like, did they uncover them? And
literally, I don't know.
From
the articles I was reading, the radar like could detect full bones and like full bodies, and then like there was 2 questionable spots out of the other 9 that they found that were like unmarked graves completely, and they were like, these are definitely like partial graves or like something's not right with these 2 spots.
They're like for sure not just like small human remains. They're for sure like, oh no,
it could be babies. I don't know. We don't know.
That's crazy that we like have the technology to be able to do that. That's cool.
But it was in 2001, so like I feel like if they redid it, they might find out more stuff.
Oh yeah, they could probably. Technology has advanced since then.
Progressed.
My cemetery's lore, there's a lot, and there's some that I'm probably not going to touch on in this that I've spoken with Abby and Cora about privately and some other friends, because it does relate back to my family. So there are some things that I'm like, probably just shouldn't share on the internet wildly. But I will say things that I have talked about on here. So like I said, the cemetery goes back to basically like pioneer era migrants that came. And the story, now some of this is lore, so I can't confirm all of this. And some of this I can confirm. So keep that in mind when you're learning about your own family's lore. Is the game of telephone is crazy. And like people tell a story, sometimes little details change every generation, because I've heard the same story of how my family, you know, came to Indiana and how this land is here, because the cemetery is actually owned by my family, and it's on family farmland, and it's on one of the original 7 Belvoir homesteads. And there's actually also a wedding venue there that you can book and check out. It's really cool. But so like, when you learn about this lore from your family, you're probably going to get like 7 different variations of it about what people think. And also there's like this weird notion of a lot of white folks in the Midwest thinking that they're all descendants of that Native American Cherokee princess. Right.
Cherokee princess.
I learned, you guys, that goes back to some land act from, I think, the Carolinas, where land was, I think, being given to indigenous people, and a bunch of white people just started saying they were native to get land, and like it was this whole thing. It wasn't even in Indiana.
Oh my gosh.
But I would be willing to bet that a lot of people that claim that specific storyline for their lineage also probably have ancestors from the Carolinas, because there is that sort of connection of that land act. But with Indiana, there was this, you know, big Indiana purchase agreement where unfortunately a lot of indigenous people were displaced or unalived. And then that stolen land was sold to European immigrants. And at some point in that narrative, my family bought the stolen land and settled it and started a tobacco empire. So yeah, it's been kind of cool finding out that I'm the bastard daughter of this like historical tobacco empire that I had no idea about, that is just riddled with horrific history and also murder. So there's that. But the fun lore, okay, aside from the morbid lore, is werewolves.
What?
Werewolves. Yeah. So my father's side of my family, amongst other things, I'm sure, because like a lot of us are very much mixed with different ethnicities, right? But mostly French immigrants. And so the French have like the loup-garou, which is like their werewolf. And I believe ours is like the rougarou, which is really kind of more well-known in like Louisiana with like the French Cajuns, right? But yeah, I have werewolf lore in my family, and there's my aunt was telling me about how there's like a rumored um, Loup-garou basically buried in that cemetery, which I'm like, who is that? And like, but see, then when I ask questions like that, it's like no one knows who it specifically is. But we have this story narrative of like, oh yeah, so and so great great uncle, he was a werewolf. And as a trad witch, I would think about fetch spirits when I think about this.
Right.
And I was kind of spending some time just sitting and digesting on this sort of lore. And I'm like, maybe it's not so much, right, of like literal physical transformation, but speaking for myself as a trad witch, and I know many other trad witches, when it comes to witch flight, like our fetch spirits and taking on the form of an animal in the other world is very much tea. So it wouldn't really be that out of my scope to think that maybe I have a great uncle whose fetch was a wolf, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the werewolf
That's so
thing is
cool.
cool. And Indiana has a ton of German and French immigrants, and like all over Indiana, there's other werewolf lore. Like there's a werewolf hollow that one of my friends was telling me about. There's also like a werewolf bridge. So another
Know
fun
that.
fact about Indiana is we got werewolves.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh.
a lot of wolf lore, babe.
I have to look into that because I feel like I'm definitely one of those witches that my fetch is 100% a black wolf. So
Mhm. Get
I love
into
that.
it. Get into
Yeah.
it. There's I think Werewolf Hollow is near like Richmond, Indiana, but I think that there's like a werewolf bridge closer to like Danville where like if you
Mm.
it's almost like a crybaby bridge phenomenon if you guys are familiar with that. Where like you
Ooh,
park your
let's
car at
go.
midnight,
And we
you put
can
your
go
car in
thrifting
neutral.
too
We can also just howl for fun.
in
Um
Danville.
recreationally. Yeah.
Oh,
Other lore, because there's a lot, and I'm trying to think of what I've already shared and what maybe I shouldn't share in case any of my living relatives are watching this. Um, oh, the Melocene. This is fun. So I'm sure many people are familiar with like the Starbucks logo of that two-tailed mermaid, and I've seen a lot of different ideas about what it is, but I know that in French art, and this is popular to be painted on barns, is this two-tailed mermaid known as the Melocene, which is essentially almost like a French Aradia, like witch initiator like figure. She's like part woman, part fairy dragon, snake, serpent, hydra, beast lady. And in a lot of like French folk magic, there's stories of Melocene and the daughters of Melocene, and this being like, this big initiatory line of right? Lore. But yeah, so a lot of French tobacco farmers paint the image of Melocene, this two-tailed mermaid, on barns because it's seen as like a protective ward, very similar to how I think Pennsylvania
Medusa.
Dutch do the hex. What are they called? Hex stars or something? I think the Pennsylvania Dutch or the Amish do that. You know what I'm
Mhm.
talking about
To
on their
me,
barns?
like it's similar to the Greeks and Medusa.
Yeah. Yeah. So learning about Melocene is interesting. The story you can find online, and there's also 7 different variations, right? But in a nutshell, the story of the Melocene is there was this king who went on a hunting trip, and he was out in a boat in the woods one day and saw this beautiful young maiden naked bathing, because of course, and he was like, oh, you're so hot, I'm gonna make you my
Ooh.
wife. And she's like, I don't know, like I'm kind of happy here. And he's like, you actually don't have a choice. And for whatever reason, she's like, oh, I don't. Huh, okay, well, I have one condition, and if you do it, then I'll consent to be, your queen, your wife. And he's like, what is it? And she's like, every month on the full moon, you have to bring me back here to this sacred well, this like little lake, and you can't come with me. You need to drop me off and come get me when the sun comes up. And he's like, that seems pretty easy. So he takes her to be like his bride, and they live very lavishly. She bears him a ton of children. Okay, like homegirl was having kids after kids after kids. The empire is flourishing. She's like, honey, I'm going to give you the full harvest. Okay. And then one fateful night, right, the king is supposed to take her to this well, and one of the king's men advises him like, hey, after all these years, haven't you ever been curious about what the hell your wife is getting up to? Don't you think maybe you should be privy to that? I mean, you are the king. And he's like, God damn it, you're right. So he sends some men and himself basically to go spy on her to figure out what is she doing at this well, right? And so when they get to the well, they find her, and she's basically in this well, and she's like this voluptuous, beautiful, naked woman, but her lower half is like a two-tailed mermaid, but instead of fish tails, they're snake tails. And she also has dragon wings. And she's also massive, like towering skyscraper, massive dragon, serpent, two-tailed lady. I don't know how they didn't see her from the kingdom. I don't know. But so then she proceeds to like basically just disappear. Like she doesn't, in the story that I read, which there's other ones where she like kills them and eats them. But in the story that I read, she just disappears. Like she's like, how dare you? Bye. And she just disappears. And then like years later, these women end up in the kingdom, like, and they're thought to be almost like nuns, right? Like convent nuns. And they refer to themselves as the daughters of Melusine. And like shortly after their arrival, the kingdom fell to shit and like all the crops went bad and like children were dying and, you know, women were dying in childbirth and like the milk was getting sour and the cattle were failing and like, yeah, the king and his kingdom crumbles. So very interesting story. And so in French folk magic, I've been reading about kind of like the similar story with Aradia, the queen of all witches, you know, the daughter of the witch mother, the first witch, the initiator of witches. I've seen French witches kind of using Melusine in a similar way where they kind of honor her as a witch mother and like, yeah. So, yeah. Sorry about my rant there, but yeah.
No, that is a really cool story.
Related to that, like Medusa technically had two sisters, right?
Right.
And the mother had also two tails, like two legs, serpent legs. So I don't know. I just feel like it all kind of ties together. Like different
mythologies
cultures and different mythologies kind of still have the same concept for words and
definitely.
I don't know.
Yeah, because I was just thinking that when you said like the mother of witches and everything, and like the first witch, I've even heard of Lilith as referred to as that.
Yeah, absolutely. So. The first vampire with Lilith too, the mother of demons, mother of abominations, mother of succubi, incubi. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of like first mother sort of stories. And I think it's important to like recognize their cultural uniqueness, but also, the overlap too of like, this archetype is so pervasive throughout all over. So that's kind of how I've been working with my cemetery. To tie it back to my cemetery, I've not really been working with specific people. There's a couple that working with just uncovering more about my red soul and my family lineage. There's a couple people that are actually buried in Kentucky that I would like to go visit and that I've been trying to build more of a relationship with. I think, Cor, you were there when we did like a little seance, and that was interesting. Whole other story. We don't probably have time for that, but we did try to do a seance, and it was wild. And yeah, I'm still kind of building my relationship with that land. And I have weird feelings given my personal history with the family of how I'm going to, and if I'm going to at all, work with some of those people. But it's definitely inspired me to look more into French witchcraft, which I've never even really thought to do up until this. So,
yeah. With my land, I've been studying Freemasons. So that's been interesting. But I think the land in general, like in the future, I would love to utilize it for like divination work or like crossing the hedge and just like scrying and seances and like all of that kind of psychic power energy stuff. I think that cemetery would be great for that if I can get up there to that relationship with it, you know.
And when you came,
we'll see.
when you came with me to mine, we did collect some dirt from my cemetery. I got some dirt from a mound where there was like native datura growing, which was pretty cool. Not like a burial mound, but just like they had a big clump of dirt from where they had dug a plot, and there was datura growing in it. So I collected some of that. And then I also got some dirt from the crossroads and some dirt from the entrance gate. So for people that might be listening, I would say some advice if you want to work with the cemetery, but you don't really have a relationship to work with anyone specifically, you don't have to get dirt from an actual
A
spirit's grave.
specific plot. Just
Yeah.
get it from
There's
the area.
other places. Yeah, there's other places in the cemetery where you can get that dirt, and use kind of your own discretion, intuition, and divination to figure out what is appropriate, you know, for you in that instance, and think about what the different properties would be. Like entrance to a cemetery dirt might be more like road opener related working.
I was gonna say, yeah, road
Yeah.
opener.
Or like
Mhm.
crossroad dirt might be more like blockbuster related or like spirit pact related. I feel like the mound, since that's dirt specifically from digging holes to put bodies in, it's not really connected to one or two or whatever specific people. It's just the dirt that they dug up. I feel like that would be really good for some malefic work. Like it's
Well,
literally
we collected some clay from that too.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't
Yeah.
just dirt. So what was awesome about us collecting it, I don't know if that's oversharing, but like
no.
utilizing that clay, you know,
Yeah.
just to form, you know, a little dog or
Imagine
something.
it would be cool to make, actually kind of inspiring me, you talking about that. It'd be cool to make like a chime candle holder out of the clay.
Oh yeah.
Because that
Or
would
an
be really
incense
easy.
holder.
Yeah. I feel like that would be easy to do. And it would be like, you know, you light the candle in the clay from the mound, and I'm getting like angles, you know.
Yeah, that's actually the next section on the doc is how have you and how how will you work with your cemetery in your practice.
Oh, how are you going to work with your cemetery, Abby?
I mean, so far I'm just getting to know the cemetery and the spirits there. But I actually, when I go into cemeteries, my go-to form of divination and spirit communication is dowsing rods. So, and I know those kind of get a bad rep, but I love dowsing rods.
I don't really know
And
why they get such a bad rap. And
I,
like,
you know, I've heard a
shouldn't.
lot of witches. I've heard a lot of witches say, "Oh, I don't trust myself, and it's just you moving them." And I'm like, "Well, I trust myself." So,
I mean,
they
you
work
could
really
say
well.
that. You could also say that about a pendulum.
Right.
So,
Right.
also, the dowsing rod.
Or a spirit board. Or
Yeah.
anything
Board
really.
too. I was gonna say a Ouija board.
And with the dowsing rods, I think about the history of dowsing rods used in folk magic in terms of like Appalachian water witching. Like,
I mean, I literally use playing cards most of,
Yeah.
of the time. Like I'll just use
Me
those
too.
for yes and no.
yeah,
Right.
I use playing cards and tarot primarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just really like the simplicity of like, I mean, yeah, I can't really do like have like a full blown conversation, obviously, because it's only yes or no. But I kind of like that because it's just like clear cut, very simple form of communication, you know? And I also really like dowsing rods because if you want to get to know a spirit, like a specific spirit in a cemetery, they can lead you to their grave.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I found the two spirits that I work with, is from my dowsing rods and them guiding me to their grave.
Like
So,
water witching, but just necromantically.
yeah, exactly. So I really want to use my cemetery through getting to know specific spirits and making like pacts with them, kind of like a partnership, if you will. Maybe some protection magic. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where it takes me, but that's how I've been using it. And I haven't collected any graveyard dirt yet, but I do want to do that. And I would advise anyone, like you were saying, Jasmine, like please don't just take dirt from just any grave. I would say not.
I would say not either. Like,
please at least build a relationship first. You know.
Yeah. Definitely.
And maybe build that pact and communicate with your spirit that you're working with, like get their permission. kind of see how they feel about it, build that relationship first, you know, like don't just, I don't know. That's,
No,
I
I
always
agree. I think,
ask.
yeah.
Like, I'll always give offerings, and I'll literally do divination that ask yes or no. Would you be
right.
okay with me taking your dirt?
Right. I even asked them, are you okay with me talking about you in my podcast?
Yeah.
Like, are you okay with me taking your picture? Are you okay with me filming you? Because one of the other spirits, like, I almost get a little emotional talking about him. And I think I've already like talked to you guys about him a little bit. He's only like a 3.5-year-old little boy, you know? And he was really shy, and he at first was not comfortable at all with me, like even doing more research on him or anything. But then I came back and I visited him, and I think that showed him that like I do want to build a relationship with him and that he can trust me. And then he finally got to the point where like, okay, you can talk about me in your podcast, and or you know, you can take my picture or whatever. So yeah, just I think they really appreciate that, you know, like building that relationship with them.
And I
Well,
think
they were
part of
nice
building,
people,
I
you
think
know?
part of building that relationship also looks like doing the work in the physical, the digital, and the astral, right?
Yeah.
Like astral work as then working with them in that astral spirit sort of sense, but also the physical work in terms of visiting, leaving offerings, and
Yes.
also like doing research about like, you know, maybe Google this if you can, maybe Google the spirit and find
Yes.
you know, some articles or some information out about them and put effort into actually learning about them. And then also do divination, followed along with, you know, the things that we learn to kind of fill in the missing pieces. Right.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like to leave when I go to my cemetery or any cemetery, I like to leave an offering for the whole graveyard, right?
Me
Or
too.
like the like the spirit keeper of like the graveyard or
The
whatever.
grave guardian, if you will.
Right, right. And I'll usually leave that either at the entrance or like in the middle. If it's a small enough cemetery, I'll leave it like right in the middle of the cemetery. But then I also leave offerings for like specific spirits that I'm working with or relatives that I'm visiting, obviously. But yeah. Anyway.
Same.
I have a little bit about the grave guardian, shameless self plug in my book right here. Okay, Ambrosia's Book of Witchflight. Also, the latest extended one, Ambrosia's Book of Spirits, has more information about the grave guardian, which has gone by different names from different witches and traditions, but essentially the grave guardian being the first person buried there or a non-human spirit of the place, kind of like the genus loci, but of the cemetery, and working with that spirit for protection and permission to ensure safe travels to and from the cemetery, not bringing anything home from the cemetery, and also to kind of act as a buffer and a road opener when you are doing divination and necromancy. And I would say in general for the grave guardian or for people in cemeteries, I think some really general good offerings, and you can kind of spin off from here and get more specific based on, you know, happenstance or culture or whatever. Tobacco, rice, water. Go to the gas station on your way to the cemetery, buy a bottle of water. It doesn't have to be hard. Coins. And Cora, I think with veterans, they have a whole system where like, I don't know if it's veteran or Freemason actually, but it's like quarters specifically mean something, dimes, nickels, pennies. If you see those left on graves, they're all
There's a
supposed
lot
to
of shell casings too.
Yeah.
Like just empty shell casings on graves over there.
That's a good idea.
Another way that I work with building a relationship with spirits, like if you are just wanting to connect and learn and hang out and talk, like almost like speed dating and like meeting new people. If you go to a cemetery, chances are, I think a lot of us have experienced this where you just feel called, like no divination tools necessary. Okay. You just feel called to go to a certain part of the cemetery for whatever reason. Like you just feel like you need to go in that direction. Go there. And then you pull 3 pennies out of your pocket. Okay. And you throw it over your left shoulder. And I don't remember where I picked this up. I think it was also from like an Appalachian witchy book that I read. But you throw those 3 pennies over your left shoulder and then you go find those pennies. And if those pennies land on a plot, then that's the potential candidate who would like to work with you or get to know you. Yeah. And sometimes that works out real good, and sometimes I can't find the damn pennies.
To go to our cemeteries together and try that out.
Yes.
I'd be down. That sounds like fun. Yeah. Yeah, and that's I always say too, when I want to get to know a specific spirit, or when I want to, you know, communicate with a specific spirit or whatever, I always say with my little dowsing rods, I'm like, okay, any spirits that want to come forward and talk to me and would like to show me where their grave is at, you should step forward. Like, please do step forward. And, you know, because I think a lot of, I don't know, I've seen some people, like, not necessarily witches, but just like people like being very demanding.
Almost like in a Solomonic way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Taking too much too soon.
Really?
And they really fuck up.
Yeah.
Also, the dead are not your Pokemon. Like, don't go out into a cemetery.
Demons and the dead, both.
Yeah, they're not your Pokemon.
No.
And keep in mind, too, when it comes to the dead, especially, that depending, which I guess it really shouldn't even matter, depending on when they passed away. But keep in mind, they could have living relatives, too. So, like, disturbing the grave in any way.
Right.
Could be really disrespectful to their living relatives. I know that, like, if my mother was buried in a plot and I went, like, let's say on Mother's Day, I went to her cemetery or I went to her grave, right? And there was a bunch of holes that were dug in where people had taken dirt for whatever reason. Like, I would be kind of upset about that.
Yeah.
You know, so
absolutely.
make sure that you treat the dead like they're your own too. You know, have that reverence. Like, this was someone's father, mother, sister, brother, child.
Right.
So
yeah, I was gonna say that earlier. Like, their people, treat them like they were people. Like, treat them how you want to be treated. You know,
right? Yeah. They're not curios for yourself. Yeah,
yeah.
Any like distinguishable areas or architecture?
I feel like we've covered that pretty well.
A little bit, yeah. I want to add one thing.
Yeah.
In my cemetery, there is one of the spirits that I'm currently working with, who is the 3.5-year-old little boy. His grave headstone is like a statue of him, and his head is cut off.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting. He has no head.
And it wasn't made that way, right? Like, the head was removed or something.
Definitely looks like it got like broken off, but it's like obviously it's made out of stone. Like,
which can erode. I mean,
right. That's true.
There are monuments that are so old that, like, you know, rain and weather has made them almost not legible. So,
and you got to think about the material that they were made with. Like, some
look at the material. Look at the material.
Yeah, some were sandstone, you know, and that just like breaks apart so easily. Some were wood. They're gone, you know.
That's true. Yeah, it's just interesting that his head is gone.
And
one of his arms too. One of his arms too, I think.
There could be someone who did it on purpose. I mean,
I know. That's so
don't rule anything out, you know? I don't know. I mean, I instantly thought of this, like, terrible story plot for this, where hypothetically maybe there was, like, you know, a man and a woman, and the woman got pregnant with some other man's kid. Okay. And Farmer Dan got real mad about it. I don't know. But
could be.
If I think about why would a child statue be decapitated, one, there's probably a man involved in that. Like, I don't see a woman taking a child statue's head off. So, and why would a man take a child statue head off?
Yeah.
Maybe it was another man's kid. That's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I need to do more research on his name is Little Neil. I need to do more research on him. I've been doing more research on the other person I've been getting to know. And I can't find much on it. It's just like I said earlier, I feel like if it's just like, even just like 50 years ago, like, I feel like the death records are just like.
Well, and they're kind of spotty. They're kind of spotty. Like, your best case, if you can't find stuff online through websites like Find a Grave, Ancestry, also the Mormons keep a hell of a database, so you can check out the Mormon website. If online is turning up with dead ends, you can also try contacting the cemetery themselves to see if they have any leads or records, or at least when like the plot was, if you need that information, or if it was a plot that was exhumed and moved to that cemetery. You can also contact like the county clerk's office, and that has to do with figuring out what county they died in, because they're not always buried in the same county that they died in, and so sometimes records are kept separate that way. And then I think you were talking about the library keeping some death records as well, so that's a possibility.
I did go to the library. My library did not have public death records, but the lady who worked there said that you probably have to go to the health department.
The health department, okay.
Yeah, but she said that it would probably cost money and you would probably have to prove that you're a relative. And I was like, okay, well, that's...
But I'm pretty sure that that's not true, because I'm pretty sure that marriage, death, and birth records are all considered to be public knowledge. I'm pretty sure.
Right.
If not, I'm sure someone will comment down below. Let us know. Okay. If I'm wrong, let us know. But I'm pretty sure that marriage, death, and birth is considered public knowledge.
Yeah. And the thing is too, like with the actual cemetery, like I finally figured out who is like the president. This is like, it's like a nonprofit cemetery. So who's like the president of the cemetery. And he's actually also, I think, the president of the Westfield Historical Society, which is really cool. So I reached out to him and he got back to me and he was like, oh, I don't know much about that. Let me like contact these people. But then I never heard back from them.
Maybe you can get an in with like the Westfield Historical Society though. Like if it's not through them, like do they have events or something? Can we go? Like that'd be kind of cool if they had like a Westfield Historical City like night or something, like a mixer, or if they had a presentation. There's a company called Unseen Press, for those of you that are around the Indy area. Unseen Press, check them out on Facebook. They do historical tours around Indy. Cora and I went to a really good one in Noblesville. And I think that they do a Westfield one too. We should go. If we can. Maybe we could figure it out to where we go to the Westfield Ghost Walk, which these Ghost Walks by Unseen Press, not sponsored, y'all, but they are very historical, so it's not like the intention.
They're very informative.
Yeah, it's called a ghost walk, but it's really more like walking around and telling the story of the town and the land and the history, along with some urban legends thrown in. But it's predominantly like a walking history lesson. And maybe we could do that and then premiere this. Like that'd be fun, you know?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
We'll have to look into that.
Yeah, we will. I didn't know that they did that.
Yeah, I found them, I think, a couple years ago. And we went to the Noblesville one, which was crazy. They have a colonial graveyard there. They also have a really creepy little white Baptist church, which I don't know what it is about.
They have a little creepy museum. That jailhouse museum is under construction right now.
And we still need to go check out that museum. Also, that jail is where the Grand Dragon of the Klan was held during trial. So that's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then the Indianapolis one was really cool too. It was a lot more walking than the Noblesville one. Just for anyone, for accessibility purposes, it was definitely more walking than Noblesville. But it was interesting.
A little bit more loud.
Yeah. And it's like downtown. Learned that like the Slippery Noodle is like the oldest functioning bar in the state, or the city.
Also one of the most haunted, supposedly.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
I'm excited to talk more about this. Like, I feel like I'm ready to, I don't know. I feel ready for something.
Well, I think our next one going to be on. All right. Well, anything else that you guys would like to add?
If you had any advice for someone who was looking to get into this, I know we've kind of touched on this a little bit throughout this entire video, but if you had like a closing thought of something to keep in mind, do you have anything?
I mean, I already said to like just be respectful and always ask permission and always build relationships. If you want to take graveyard dirt from a specific grave or a specific person, like please, please, please build a relationship with that person. And I would say too, even if you knew them in life really well, get to know them in death first also.
Mhm.
Don't just assume you can take their dirt, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's a big part.
Always ask for consent,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And as trad witches, anyway, we do veil ourselves before
Mhm.
going into the graveyard, while in the graveyard, to protect ourselves. Because one thing I would like to say too is that if a person is maybe not the nicest person in life, why would they all of a sudden be nice in death?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, for me, especially, like, when I'm doing the channeling and I'm letting them speak through me, it's very important to be veiled. It's very important to be, like,
Yes.
protected in some form. Otherwise, like, you can really get fucked up.
And I
So,
feel like
Sure.
the veil, not only is it protection, but it's also kind of like, it's a signifier of respect, and it's a signifier to us as practitioners that, like, okay, we're entering an altered state, and this is going to be like, we're setting this intention, and we're kind of opening the way by the act of veiling of, like, this isn't just a casual stroll to the cemetery. Like, we're getting dressed to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
and I like when I put on my witch cord, you know, and we're about
Yeah.
to do ritual.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think if I had any sort of parting advice, I would say that if you do take any of our tips and advice, keep in mind, you know, take it with as much salt as you want. These are our practices as three trad witches, right? And even
Mhm.
amongst trad witches, there's variation on how we do things. So
Sure.
we're not telling you that necessarily that this is the way you have to do it. This is the way that we do it per our tradition and our personal practice as well. But I would say
I
don't be
also
too hard
cleanse
on
myself
yourself.
after.
I would say don't be too hard on yourself in the sense that if you go and you're trying to have spirit communication, keep in mind, just like the living, they might not answer the phone the first time that you call. Some people don't even like phone calls. And it's not
Right.
that they don't like you, it's that they just missed your call. So maybe try again later. Okay, keep that in mind too. And if they don't
Mhm.
answer after like your third summoning or your third calling, like maybe they don't want to talk to you. Maybe they don't want to talk to you right now, and maybe try again later. That's why divination's helpful. Or maybe not ever, and they don't owe you communication. So,
Right.
but yeah, don't
And
be
you
too
Again.
hard
have to
on
accept
yourself
no
if you don't.
and don't push it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be demanding. Don't be Solomonic. Come on.
And don't be hard on yourself either if they don't answer the phone. There's times where people
Right.
call me and I miss their call. You know, doesn't mean that I don't want to talk to them. So,
Right. Right. Core, any parting words?
Oh.
Oh.
I mean,
Bye.
you guys pretty much covered it. Other than like cleansing yourself too being important, there's not
Yeah.
much for me to really add, you know, just be respectful, know what the fuck you're doing, know when not to take too much, and cleanse.
Yeah. I need to be better about cleansing, if I'm being honest. Okay, well, this was fun. Thank you, anyone and everyone who decided to join us for the premiere, or even if you're watching later on. And episode 2 will be out in December, right?
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
And if you have any topic suggestions, feel free to like drop them down below. We have a well of weird that we've kind of been pulling from in terms of what we're going to cover and our schedule and everything. But I think that we're all pretty open to like topic suggestions. So,
and if you have questions, I may answer them, you know, so drop some questions.
Or we might miss your call. Doesn't mean that we don't like you. We will try to get back to you at our earliest convenience.
But we don't owe you anything.
During regular
True.
business hours, also.
Okay.
Blessed
be.
Blessed
And
be.
see you guys next time. See you in hell. Mwah.